All right, so we've just finished off reading page 393, Compromises on Slavery. So we had the Great Compromise with the representation. We had that the southern states thought that slaves should count toward population. The northern states said no, they shouldn't. They came up with a compromise. Remember, the 60 out of the 100 slaves, more than that, obviously, but that's just an example, would be counted. So now let's take a look further. We have the free and enslaved population in the United States, and this is in 1750 to 1780. So 1750, you can see free persons, enslaved persons. It continues to grow where free persons is growing much more. How many enslaved people live in the United States in 1780? Right, so this is free, enslaved. Hopefully you said about 600,000, about that many people. A continuing issue. Some delegates were afraid that if the Constitution outlawed slavery or stopped states from importing slaves, the southern states would not approve it because they relied heavily on slavery. So, to reach a compromise, the delegates agreed that Congress could not stop states from importing enslaved people from other countries before 1808. After 1808, Congress banned the slave trade with other countries. However, enslaved people could still be bought and sold within the United States. As a result, many enslaved people continued to be separated from their families. This was not something America was proud of, and now, in thinking about it, it was the way that it was. These men wanted to be rich. They cared about the livelihood. They cared about building up the United States. Now we know a lot better. The reading check. What issue was settled when delegates agreed to the 3/5 compromise? Right, so what issue was settled? And that was whether or not to count enslaved people when figuring out representation. And we kind of have to go back here to that in this area of the 3/5 compromise. So looking at the summary, instead of just fixing the Articles of Confederation, the delegates at the Constitutional Convention decided to write a new constitution. This is almost like when we start on an idea and you can't support it, and then in writing you just say, never mind, I'm not going to go fix this anymore. I'm just going to completely restart. And that's exactly what these gentlemen did. The Great Compromise resolved conflicts over representation in the government. And then we see some of the questions here, what to know. How was a new plan of government developed at the Constitutional Convention? Right, so the delegates developed a new plan of government after much debate and compromise. We're looking at the vocabulary, explain how the terms federal system and republic are related. Well, the Constitution set up a republic that is governed by a federal system. The history. Who were some of the people associated with the development of the United States Constitution? Well, just a few of them, and we saw in this picture right here some of these delegates. So a few of them were Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, Roger Sherman, George Read, George Washington, Edmund Randolph, William Patterson, Governor Morris. Question 4, how did the makers of the Constitution try to fix some of the problems that existed under the Articles of Confederation? So they gave the federal government the power to collect taxes, maintain an army, and print all money. Looking at the persuasive letter, imagine you're a delegate. Write a letter to your family explaining the role of compromise at the Constitutional Convention. Right? Each side needed to give a little. That's exactly what a compromise does. And then we see here that compromise played an important role in allowing the Constitutional Convention to move forward. Well, we know that the Great Compromise settled the issue of representation. And we also know that sometimes more than one group has to work together to move forward. And that's what then gives us our conclusion. All right.